Hey, what's up? It's DJ. I just wanted to put together a video for this week's excellent Hot Pieces of Apes topic, which is coming out. Now, coming out is something I've done a lot of in my life. I'm a very, very, very out asexual person. And so I can talk about it with some amount of experience. When I first started coming out, I had this problem. The first problem was that I was uncomfortable. But then once I got over being uncomfortable coming out, I found out that when I came out as asexual, I had to talk about it for 40 minutes. Because it's not like coming out as gay. If you come out as gay, people basically know what gay means, and they sort of, they understand something new about you, and then it's good. But if you come out as asexual, no one understands that concept. And so I would kind of try to really slyly just mention that I was asexual, and people would turn around and it would become the whole topic of conversation for a long, long time, and I wound up having to give this whole lecture. And I kind of stopped coming out for a while just because I didn't want to have to give that lecture. I didn't want to derail conversations and talk about my sexuality for an hour, because that's not fun when it's the third time that week. And the first thing then, if you're going to come out, you have to know how to talk about asexuality really well and really articulately, because people are going to have a lot of questions. But what I learned after that was that you can kind of bypass having to talk about asexuality a lot. If you come out and you talk about asexuality really slyly. Coming out, by the way, I'm talking about it this way because coming out isn't something that you do once. Coming out is something you're doing constantly. You're constantly meeting new people and having to find a way, if it's relevant, to drop the fact that you're asexual as you become friends with them over time. And so what I realized is that coming out as asexual it's almost like marketing, like advertising. If you look at how they introduce new products, like any new concepts. Okay, human brain. I love talking about the human brain. The human brain works when it finds a new concept and doesn't know what it is. It wants to explore it. It wants to figure it out. But in the meantime, while it's figuring it out, what it wants to do is find other concepts that it understands that it can relate to this new concept, so it knows what to do with it. So if you go to a pizza place you've never been to before, you'll look at the pizza place and be like, okay, what other pizza places is this like? Is this this looks like this one fancy pizza place that I know about, or does it look like this not fancy pizza place that I know about? And everything I expect about this new pizza place will kind of have to do with which archetype in my head it relates to. And the same thing is true with asexuality. When you draw an asexual bubble in someone's head, there's a set of lines that go from that bubble to other concepts they understand. And you want to draw the lines that let them understand what asexuality really is. And even if you're not going to talk about it with them for 40 minutes, if you can draw the right lines, they can pretty much get the right idea without needing a really in-depth description. And so when you come out, it's important to know how to do that. And if you don't draw any lines, if you just say, you know what, I'm asexual, and you leave it at that, then people form a really, really negative concept. Because if I just say asexual, the only concept that relates to is not having sex. And most sexual people's, for most sexual people, the connotation of not having sex is really negative. They're when they think not having sex, they're oh, frustration, repression, lack of emotional connection, lack of desire. It's a lot of really pent-up bad stuff that you want to avoid. So you need to draw lines. Instead of just drawing a line from asexual to not having sex, you need to draw a line to some other concepts to kind of give them a better picture of what's going on. And there's a couple concepts that I always use. The first concept that you want to draw a line to, which is a really, really important one, is the gay rights movement. People understand that even if they don't, especially for issues like trans politics, even if they don't understand trans people, they kind of get that they're supposed to be respectful of trans people. And they're supposed to give them the benefit of the doubt that their experience is legit as humans, and then they can figure out the details later on once they've established that they respect someone. And you want people to think about asexuality that way. You want them to give us the benefit of the doubt. So if you allude to asexuality as like being gay, then people will do that. And you can do that subtly with the language you use. If you use words like sexual orientation or human sexual diversity or even the phrase coming out, if you refer to an asexual community as a lot of people that all come together and kind of work for asexual visibility, then that will give people the cue that being asexual is kind of like being gay, and they'll be way, way more likely to respect you and way, way more likely to kind of ask questions in a respectful way. The second concept that you want to draw a line to is emotion. There's a little bit of a preconceived notion that if you are asexual, it means that you can't feel anything, like you have no desire about anything whatsoever. And that's because for a lot of people, kind of sexual desire is like the template of all human desire, right? Like all emotion kind of somehow goes back to our desire for sex, which I don't understand. But you need to assert that you're a person who like has emotions that work. And so if you come out as asexual, it's good to go out of your way to kind of refer to some strong feelings that you have. And, you know, whether that's strong feelings about like activities that you do, but like express passion that you have in your life. And it's even more helpful if you have a desire for intimate relationships, either whether they're romantic relationships or aromantic relationships. It's really helpful to express that so that people, if you desire intimacy, if that's a big deal for you, like let people know that that's something you desire, because that will help them kind of come to terms with it and relate better to what's going on with you. And so the second thing is emotion. The third thing, if you're coming out as asexual, that's really important to establish is that, why am I blanking on it? Is to establish that being asexual is positive. So when and this kind of gets to like most people's connotation with a lack of sex is repression. It's negative. So you have to really let them know that this is a positive thing for you. This is that thinking of yourself as asexual has to do with self-discovery. It doesn't have to do with kind of drawing a box around yourself that's limiting. So talk about how realizing that you're asexual, you know, it really fit, and how it's helping you understand your life. And also talk about, if you are, and hopefully you are, talk about how you're comfortable with sex. It's not that you're afraid of sex, that you think that sex is bad, and maybe you are a little uncomfortable with sex because, you know, whatever, it's a little weird. But talk about how, in principle, it's not that you have a problem with people being interested in sex, it's that you just aren't individually interested in it. And if you demonstrate in the conversation that you're accepting of them, then they're way more likely to be accepting of you. So there's three things when you come out that you want to do are make some reference to the LGBT community as being like the asexual community. Make some statement about how you feel really strongly, passionately about things. And this can be offhandedly. You don't have to be like, I'm asexual, but I still feel passionate about things. Like, you know, refer to a couple things that you have strong emotions about. And kind of let people know that you're comfortable with other people being sexual. And you're comfortable with the idea of sexuality in general. And if you do those three things, then people are going to get a much more positive impression of asexuality. And you can kind of weave them into the conversation without having to give a whole big, long 40-minute discussion on what asexuality is. And if you do, if people are curious and they ask you a lot of questions, go ahead and give that discussion. But if they aren't curious, then you can just kind of do it in 5 minutes and they'll have a good impression and you can go on with your life and your conversation. So that's it for my Hot Pieces of Ace video for this week. I hope you're doing well.